everybody. We're ready to get started. Good morning. I'm Maria Brennan, President of AWRT. Welcome to the AWRT Women's Media Forum. Give yourselves a round of applause. You're lifelong learners. You believe in continuing your education, and you're also supporting AWRT. 1 second, those are my glasses. Those are important. Ouch. Anyway, I'm going to go by script because Amy threatened me. When I don't go by script, I tend to go long. Last year, AWRT's Strategic Planning Committee conceived of an event where we could get you all together so you could continue your education. So thank you for joining us this morning. Many of your colleagues helped plan today. So I want to recognize you. Kay Olin, Chair of the Programming Committee. Aaron Carter, Chris McLaughlin, Bonnie Press, stand up Bonnie, Kathy Ross, yay, Carolyn Stidham, and Desiree Vanderwall. I also want to thank our esteemed sponsors. We couldn't do this without them. They're not just supporting AWRT, they're supporting women in the industry. So many, many thanks to AT&T, CATS Women's Career Summit, National Association of Broadcasters, NAB Education Foundation, National Cable Telecommunications Association, the Radio Advertising Bureau, and VCI Solutions. Give them a big round of applause. Now, speaking of sponsors, I'm going to go back to cats for a second. I know how much Chickie's going to love this. Chickie Bucko missed our last board meeting, and so we decided, knowing Chickie as well as we do, that we would publicly recognize her as she transitions off the board after many, many years of dedicated service. So Chickie, come up here. I'm going to further irk you by making you get up here and be noticed. I'm not going to drone on and on about all the things that Chickie helped make happen. I'm not going to talk about her tell it like it is attitude, her bold vision, her leadership style that we've all come to know and love. I'm only going to say this. The past dozen years would not have been nearly as much fun without Chickie. This is for you. You don't have to open it now, but it's my favorite color blue. Say something.
I want to thank everyone. Of course, it's a pleasure, and I'm not going anywhere. I mean, I'll be around. It's very difficult to give up the power, though. I wish there was like a helicopter waiting outside, but there's not. So I want to, though, acknowledge the great company that I work for, the CATS Media Group, because they allow me to help them support AWRT along with Bonnie Press. They're really very active in everything we do. So I appreciate them.
Including this morning.
Including?
Sponsoring this session.
Yes, this session is sponsored by the CATS Media's Women's Career Summit, which is something we started several years ago. They're very supportive, so I appreciate that. And I don't want to leave here without, I know we're maybe a little sick of hearing about the plane that landed on the water, but everybody should know that the miraculous recovery of all those people was handled by Maria, who I was on the phone with, and I said, oh, a plane went in the water, a fully loaded plane, because we knew before someone had seen it, they were in a meeting, and so I tell everybody on the phone, she says a prayer to St. Teresa. Everybody thinks it was Sully.
I'll borrow the helicopter.
She is great. So thank you all. I've enjoyed it, but I'm going to be around. I'm not going anyplace. Thank you.
Thank you, Chickie. I know you're going to flog me later for that public show of affection. CATS Media Group did make today's session possible. Lara Logan is here, and she did what I told her to do. I told her, bring that new baby of yours, because I need to hug him. So before we bring her up, I want to introduce you to our newly elected chair. Yes, she has big shoes to fill as Mary Bennett becomes the immediate past president. In her first official capacity of the 2009 chair of AWRT, please welcome Sylvia Strobel, partner at Lehman Strobel.
Good morning. Let me begin by thanking our immediate past chair of AWRT, Mary Bennett, and all of those AWRT leaders who have come before me to help lay the foundation we now have the privilege to build upon. Please stand, Mary, and all past AWRT national chairs and chapter presidents, and allow us to recognize you. At our luncheon, I will share some of my thoughts about the future of the industry and AWRT. But first, I have the honor of introducing our opening keynote speaker this morning, CBS News Chief Foreign News Correspondent Lara Logan. Lara was the only journalist from an American network in Baghdad when the U.S. military invaded the city, reporting live as the statue of Saddam fell. She broke the story of the abuse of special needs Iraqi orphans, a report that made headlines around the world. Logan's reports have included a penetrating interview with Pakistani President Musharraf after the assassination of Bhutto, a rare one-on-one interview with General John Abazad, and a report on the airport road of Baghdad, the most dangerous piece of asphalt in the world. That's just a snapshot of her career, so I encourage you to refer to your registration packet to read her complete bio. Please join me in welcoming Gracie and Emmy Award winner and card-carrying AWRT member, Lara Logan.
Good morning, everybody. I was a little late because I was pumping breast milk before I left this morning. I'm still adjusting to the working mother thing. This is my first week back. From maternity leave, my baby is just 9 weeks. He's over there. I was feeling guilty about bringing him because I thought he'd probably rather be at home, but that separation anxiety. Actually, it was funny because yesterday I was at Walter Reed shooting a story for CBS Evening News, and it's an amazing story. This incredible Green Beret, and who was over in Afghanistan and was wounded in an IED attack. And he broke his femur and his severed his femoral artery, as well as his eye was blasted out of his head, and he had a lot of other injuries. And he was telling me yesterday that when they told him, when his captain, the medic was treating him, and one of the guys came over, and one of his friends looked at him, and he said he could see in his eyes, and he said, "What's wrong?" And his friend said, "Nothing." And he said, "What's wrong with my eye?" And he said, it's fine, forget it. But actually his eye was hanging out of his head. So, and he was telling me when the captain came and said to him, it's going to be another 30 minutes for the medevac, he said to himself, I don't know if I can make it. He knew that he was bleeding out very rapidly. And then when the medevac bird finally arrived, he asked the pilot how long to the hospital, and he said 60 minutes. And he said to himself, that's it, I'm going to die. And he woke up 4 days later in the hospital to the sound of his wife's voice. But many months later of agony, really, and continued problems. I think we tend to think, especially when you're in the field, you tend to think, you get the news, you're in an attack, you're in an ambush, you're with soldiers, and you get the news, so-and-so died, so-and-so lived. And you think, when you hear that they lived, oh, he's going to be okay, which means he's not going to die, you think they're going to be okay. But yesterday was just something I've wanted to do for a very long time, was to be on the other side of the process, to be with the soldiers who've come, the soldiers who are going to be okay, and see what that really means. And this guy, Mike, had so many problems. He was in such pain from his injuries that his wife told us, he used to come home from work and collapse, and it was all he could do just to get up in the morning. And she said, we didn't have a life. She said, my husband never came back from that place. And he elected to have his leg taken off above the knee. And in fact, he asked his wife about this, and she didn't want to tell him yes or no, because she said, you know, what if he would have regretted it and hated me for it forever? And, you know, how could I be the one that said, take your leg off? And he made the decision on his own, and he thought that was going to solve all his problems, but then he had one infection after another, and eventually it's kind of stabilized, and yesterday he was being fitted with a special prosthetic that allows him to run, and he ran for the first time in 3 years. Just one lap around the room at Walter Reed's special facility for amputees. But that was the first time in 3 years. Anyway, this is a very long way of telling you that when you lose your leg, your sweat has less area to escape out of your body, and so he sweats a lot more than he used to. And when we sat down for the interview, the PR person at Walter Reed brought him a towel, and she put this towel, and I thought, what is she doing? And then I remembered, oh yeah, my producer told me, you know, he sweats a lot. And I didn't know whether he would be feeling uncomfortable. You know, he's got television cameras on him, and he's never met me and all that. So I leaned over and I said, don't worry if you sweat, Mikey. I said, because I'm breastfeeding, and I'm probably going to be leaking breast milk all the way through this interview. And he roared with laughter. I said, you know, why do you think I'm wearing this jacket? I said, they haven't made TV-friendly breast pads yet. And it was great because the way he laughed, I thought, wow, this is going to be fun. And it was just such an incredible experience to sit down and interview him and talk to him. And when I said to him at the end, you know, he said, after all of this, he re-qualified for the Green Berets, did a jump master course for airborne operations. So he's now the jump master in charge of other Green Berets on their airborne training, and is back on active duty, and he wants to go back to Afghanistan. And I, you know, of course, I asked him, why would you want to go back when you nearly died? And he said, because I feel normal over there. And that's the amazing thing about my work, is that as hard as it was to leave my baby on Monday morning, it really is such a privilege to meet the people that I meet and to tell their stories. And I realized when I was back in the office and I was okay, and I thought, it's because I really love, not that I ever needed to be reminded of it, but I really love what I do, because it's not about me. It's about the most incredible things, and some of them are terrible, but life is all of those things. And when I was growing up in South Africa, I knew instinctively, without being told, I guess because of the upbringing I had, maybe at home, because of the way my parents were, that I wanted to know what was really going on in my country, and I wanted to know the truth about that, and I didn't want some sanitized version of lies to make me feel better that the government was feeding us in the media, and I wanted to see it for myself. I didn't want to be lied to by anybody, and I think that's what I've always stayed true to, because it's not about my career, it's not about anything except who I am and what I believe in. And I was so lucky in South Africa to start out that way, because I didn't start out wanting to be on television. I didn't start out wanting anything like that. I just started out wanting to do something about what I knew deep down in my heart was very, very wrong. And along the people whose stories I got to tell in South Africa, the people that I got to meet, reinforced that for me. And it was a big shock when I came to television. I left South Africa and came to work at ABC News in London, and I met people who just wanted to be, I don't even know what they wanted to be. They just didn't care about anything except maybe their job, or stabbing somebody else in the back, or it was just such a cutthroat, evil environment, and I had never encountered that. all the journalists I worked with in South Africa were so united in this great purpose that we all had, this incredible, right and wrong, black and white. There was this great evil, and of course there's much nuance in everything. So it wasn't that simple, but overall in the story there was no doubt in anyone's minds, what we were fighting for. We were fighting for the end of apartheid, for the truth to be known about what was happening in South Africa, because there was this incredible belief that if people knew, they would do something about it. There was no way that people could know about this and not want to put it right. And that belief is still with me. That's why I go to Afghanistan. That's why I go to Iraq. That's why I'm going to leave my baby and go back to those places, as hard as that is. And I've started writing a book for him about all the little things, because my mom died a few years ago, and I often think back, I wonder, was I like this as a baby? Or, my sister was 8 months pregnant when my mom died, and she has 2 beautiful girls who we adore. But we often talk about, were we like this? And did we do that? And I wonder, what this means. And really only your mother can tell you. Fathers are useless. They don't remember any of that stuff. And I thought, if I'm not going to be around, when he reads this book, he'll know. He'll know about all those nights, the long nights and the long days, and all the great little things. The first time he smiled, and his father and I arguing about whose turn it is, and all that kind of stuff. And that's a happy thing. I hope that I'm around when he reads it. But I had to think a lot about what I was going to do. I could have stayed out there forever. I was 4 years in Baghdad, and if I didn't have a baby right now, I'd be on satellite from Kabul, because Pakistan is really where, as a journalist, we need to be. I mean, there are a lot of other important places, of course, and listening to Hillary Clinton this morning, it's really as they're going lightning fast, the Obama administration, and it's quite something to see. Certainly in my lifetime, I've never seen an administration move that fast with that kind of determination, which is just extraordinary. And, and I have to say, a lot of people said during the, it's Obama's, talk's a good talk, but is he going to deliver? And I don't think, my response to that at the time was, if anyone was going to deliver, it's going to be Barack Obama. A leader like him, I think, only comes along once in a million years. But we have to see. Hopefully that's how he will prove to be. But I always think back to when he announced his nomination, and I think most of the Democratic Party looked at him and said, "Who's this little boy who thinks he's ready to run?" He did that on his own, and there's a quality in him that I've seen. Whether it's in some of the ANC youth leaders who I met in South Africa all those years ago, or whether it's the way Marwan Barghouti, the Palestinian leader that was jailed by the Israelis. Whether you like him or hate him, he has that magic, and I think it comes from a real conviction, and it's a kind of sincerity that even politicians can't fake. Which is something. One of the things I wanted to talk about this morning, because I know that there are a lot of women here, is you look on television today, and yes, there are lots of very attractive women, and it's kind of become normal in many ways. But I remember, I'm 37 years old, and I remember what it was like when I started as a journalist. I was 17, and when I got my first job in television, I was 21. And the reason that people at work think I'm psychotic is because without even thinking about it, I knew that as a young woman, I had to work harder and know more than anybody else, and I didn't mind, because I was very happy to do that. And there was only one way to do it for me, and that was to do my absolute best, to give everything. And I'm like that about everything in my life. And I remember I used to do a lot of work in my boss's name. When I was at Reuters Television, I used to write my scripts in his name, all the scripts for the agency, and I used to do all the accounts in his name, and all the client, all our clients. I did all of that in his name. And my boyfriend at the time said to me, you know, he's taking advantage of you. And I was like, really? You think? But my point was, I know he's taking advantage of me. I'm not an idiot. I'm doing this because I want to know I can do all this stuff. And I feel good at the end of every single day knowing that I did more and I did it better than anyone else in the office. I can do more than any of them. You can strap 3 of these guys together and I can still leave them in my trail, you know? It really wasn't about being taken advantage of. I said, when I am tired of this, or when I think that it's reached the time, then I'll stop. I'm in control here. You know, I think that was the thing that he didn't understand, is that I was in control. I made the decision to do that. I wasn't just being taken advantage of. I did it because I made that conscious choice. And I mean, I have to say there are a lot of men in this business who have backed me, who have been really great to me. Our executive producer at 60 Minutes, when he hired me, I was a nobody and I was a nothing in the United States. I was a little South African girl. There were no non-Americans on 60 Minutes, and there were very few. I think only a few Canadians, you know, on American network television. CNN and others had hired foreigners, but there was still a glass, you know, a very firm brick wall with the networks. If you were non-American, you could not be on American television. And when I sat in Jeff Vega's office, I was so tired of doing interviews and that at that point that, you know, I think I didn't even bother to wear a suit to that meeting. And we just chatted like 2 journalists. And Jeff never saw my age. He never saw any of that stuff. He just said, I want her because she's a real journalist, and very few of them walk through my door these days. And I do think back to the day the CNN bureau chief in London, after 2 years of writing to them, every month I wrote to them, telling me that no one with hair like that, i.e. long, straight, dark hair, or blonde hair, would ever be taken seriously on television. He said, if you want to be on air, my girl, you can do yourself a favor and cut your hair. And I did think about it. And then I thought, but I don't really want short hair. And so that was that, you know. I never thought about it again until I could think about, well, screw you, you know. I did it anyway. And I want to say that it was very hard being feminine in the places that I was, in Burundi and all over Africa. But the African people didn't care. You know, I could go and sit and interview the president of Malawi and the president of Angola and the minister of defense and Jonas Savimbi, the Angolan rebel leader, his deputy, in the bush where you need to wear their last holdout before the Americans gave the Angolan government the coordinates and had him killed. And all these people that I was with whenever I was reporting on a story, the Afghans, the Iraqis, they don't care. It makes no difference to them whether I'm wearing lip gloss or not. And so if I want to wear it, I'm going to wear it, because it actually doesn't make any difference to my reporting. It's just who I feel comfortable being. And that is the one thing that I can't even tell you I've had to hold on to it, because the truth is that I don't know how to be any other way. And it's far too much hard work to even try. It was like my mother used to say, can you just say yes for once? Just, you know, you can head out the door and drive as fast as you want, but when I say drive carefully, can you just for once in your life say yes? Instead of saying, no, Mom, I mean, what am I going to do? I'm going to head as fast as I can for the next car in front of me. It's like, why wouldn't I drive carefully? How can you ask me to drive carefully? You know? And the truth is, I can't ever just say yes. I can't, because that's not who I am. And I, amazingly somehow, that has been good enough, because the people that write into CBS, the people that take an interest in my work and watch, the one consistent thing that they all say is that they feel like that they're hearing the truth. They may not like it, they may not agree with it. There are plenty of people that write into CBS about how much they hate me, and they don't like my hair, and they don't like my voice, and you can't believe the things that people take the time to write in. But for the overwhelming number of people feel that that what they believe what they hear. They believe that I'm telling the truth about it. And that's one of the amazing things. The U.S. military treated me with a great deal of suspicion. They tend to think that the media is left-wing and biased, and CBS is the communist network, and we're all out to get them and all that stuff. And I have never done any kind of sycophantic stories with the military. I've always told it like it is, and in the end, that really counts for a lot with them. I've never had to retract a story or correct a story or apologize for a story, because whether they've liked it or hated it, it's always been the truth. And it's funny that people always say to me, is the media, do you guys get told to do this or told to do that? And there are changes. There was a time under the Bush administration where it was very difficult to do certain kinds of stories. But no one tells you to change your words or anything like that. I mean, that's why I like being on the end of a satellite phone with bombs dropping around me, because the editor is not going to say, we need to work on your script a little. Instead, they're just grateful that they're getting something from you. That's the best way to file. So I guess I've talked enough. I know that we're probably running over time, and I did promise I'd love to take questions. I had a night nurse for 2 weeks. She's finished now, unfortunately. But she said to me, I said to her this morning, can you stay a few minutes? I said, I have got to shower, because yesterday, before my interview, I was brushing vomit out of my hair. And she said, no problem, I'll stay. She said, have you prepared anything? I said, no, I don't prepare things. I said, my theory is, if I don't know what I'm talking about on television, if they ask me a question and I can't answer it, I shouldn't be there. So if you want, we can take a couple of quick questions. Do you want to do that? Do you have time? Okay.
Hello, thank you very much for a wonderful talk this morning. I'm reading a book now called Women Don't Ask, and it's all about the many reasons why women don't negotiate when it comes to money. And I was wondering, in your, with your enthusiasm in your early days, because I'm sure you have managers and agents now that ask for money, but in your early days, did you ever find that you were so happy to get the job that you just accepted what they offered at first, and then found out later that the men in the newsroom that you were working with were getting more than you were?
When I was working at Reuters Television, I literally ran that entire operation, and I'd always been, second, and now I was the only one running it, and they decided to hire somebody else who was a great guy. Actually, was my suggestion, and he'd never done that job before. He was an editor, and he negotiated a salary that was 3 times my salary, and I trained him. But I was, 23, 24. It's a little difficult for me because I've always been much younger doing the job that I'm doing than anybody else. But and I'm a terrible negotiator. I was always so grateful to get the job that I never negotiated anything ever, and I was consistently underpaid, consistently my whole career. But then again, when I was 17 and I was working at the newspaper, I was still in high school. And I was so grateful for the opportunity that I just said to them, you don't even have to pay me. In fact, my first 4 or 5 jobs I got by telling them you don't have to pay me. And then they always just paid me for the work that I did. And at Reuters, even when I would work, say, 30 days in a month, because I didn't take any time off, and they would pay me for 5. And I was grateful for that. And I remember my cousin has got a 400-pound brain, and he's wonderful. He's really absolutely brilliant. And he is CFO of British Gas now, and chairman of the FTSE 100 lobby group in London. And he's the youngest person ever listed individually on the London Stock Exchange. I mean, he's a genius, and he is a very hard worker. And he said to me years ago he got this big Christmas bonus, and I said, wow, that's great. They gave you such a huge bonus. I said that's amazing. And he said, well, but I earned it. And I said, what do you mean? He's like, do you know how I earned it? I mean, it was he had he didn't feel like the company was doing him a favor. And all my life, I sort of, I was grateful for anything that I could get, and, any sort of favors bestowed on me by the company. Are there any other questions? At the back?
How has your journalism changed, if at all, since you became a mother?
The journalism never changes for me. It really doesn't, because I'm still. It was interesting, I didn't even have any written questions or anything. My producers know better most of the time than to try and write anything down for me, because I'm not going to read it off. I'm not going to sit in someone's interview and read off a script. And when I sat down with this guy yesterday, I thought, boy, I don't actually know. I don't think I remember anything I read in the brief about this story. And then I thought, oh, well, it doesn't matter, because I just let natural curiosity inform my questions. I pay attention to what the people are saying in the interview, and so there's a natural kind of follow-on, because I'm listening to them, and I trust that I've read enough and listened enough and paid enough attention that my base of knowledge is strong enough. I mean, if sometimes you do a story, especially with 60 Minutes, on something that you've never heard of before, and you really have to make sure that you know what you're talking about. But I think that how my journalism is affected by being a mom will be determined by how I'm affected by being a mom. And I think one of the amazing things about being a mom is everywhere you go, babies are like little rays of sunshine. Everywhere you go, they make people smile. And it's very sweet. But I think that one of the things that's very hard when you're a mom is, like, I will often look at my baby who's got everything he needs, and it makes me think about children who don't have that. And because I leap up, if he's got a dirty diaper, I'm leaping up to change it, and I think about the babies that I've encountered in my work, who have been neglected or abandoned, children who don't have a diaper changed for weeks at a time, and I try and imagine, when he's crying and I'm at my wit's end, I think about what happens. How does a single mom deal with this? In a small, tiny apartment who's got to go to work in the morning, who's maybe got a lot of other kids to support, and this child doesn't stop screaming, and you just feel like you can't take it anymore. I mean, and I think about. I call my baby the mind eraser, because things they come and go. It's like I have no past. It's like everything's gone. It's amazing. But I did a story in the UK on a young girl, Victoria Clombier, who came over from Africa. Her mother sent her over from Africa to live with her aunt, because she wanted her to have an education and to have the life that she couldn't give her in Sierra Leone. And her aunt and her boyfriend tortured and murdered Victoria. And when she was found in a bath in a small apartment in Tottenham in London, she had over 200 wounds on her body. There were pieces of her scalp were missing, and she died, in fact, in the end of exposure, because they had her on a black bin bag naked in the winter, and she was tied. Her wrists and her ankles were broken from where she'd struggled with the restraints. And they threw scraps of food in there, and she, an animal, had to try and reach the food. And it was just, I read the autopsy report in the office, and I was howling. And that story has haunted me for years, because that little girl's face never left me. And so I think a lot about things like that, and it's unbearable, I think, when you're a mom. It really is, it's unbearable. So, and although you can sympathize about those things when you've never had a child,